That was an interesting talk that Clare gave. But anyway, let me go to my first question first, and I'll comment on her talk afterwards,
Okay.
If we have time.
Okay.
I got into a debate with a theist, and whenever he brought up something, I would counter with another argument, but then he brought up the fact, or not the fact, but he said that you can't use science to prove anything in history, and I couldn't think of a way to argue with him about that. I was hoping maybe you could tell me what should I say in a case like that.
That's easy. Science doesn't prove anything ever. It only supports the hypothesis or refutes it. And the thing about history is we can go with the information we have, and you can support stuff the best you can, but you can't ever actually prove it. Now, there's a hell of a lot of evidence there. If you do carbon dating, and the science behind it is huge, tremendous, and legitimate. And so if he feels like you can't get enough evidence to show that history is real.
He doesn't think carbon dating works.
Of course he doesn't.
Okay. Well, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. History is a discipline that is kind of abductive. It's let's take this information and come up with the most plausible explanation of our past. We can, that we're not going to get to certainty or not even close, and it's all about how reliable are the sources and what are they, do you have sources for and against all this?
Yeah.
You can support,
well, as far as he was concerned,
you can support the basics of history, your inferences that you're making about history, by appealing to science. You have archaeology. But the key thing is, if all he means is we can't prove anything in the past, well, first of all, as Clare pointed out, science doesn't prove things. It makes, it creates the most reliable models that accurately represent the facts of reality. However, everything is in the past. Everything. You hearing this is already in the past. And so if you do this thing about, we can't, go back in the past, we can't, then everything becomes useless and you can say nothing about anything. So it's not surprising to me that you found somebody who doesn't believe carbon dating works, because clearly they've never studied carbon dating. Because I would be shocked if there's anyone who's actually studied carbon dating who would come to the conclusion, this doesn't work.
Right. You had a caller a while back who explained it extraordinarily well with M&Ms and cookies.
Yep.
Do you remember that? Go back and find it. Here's the thing. Was he trying to say that the Earth is only 6,000 years old and you can't prove that it's older than that?
No, we didn't discuss that, but he felt that the Gospels were historical documents, and I tried to argue and said they...
Well, if you can't use science to do history, how's he reaching the conclusion that the Gospels are historical documents?
He didn't really answer that question.
Of course not.
Right.
It's much easier to just dismiss the evidence that's presented to you than to present evidence on behalf of your own position.
And that's so unscience, it's unreal, because science goes in without any suppositions. If you come in with a supposition that God is real and the Bible is true and all that stuff, you're never going to get anywhere.
In a real way, it's kind of like, so if you walk into my house, there's a light switch, and if you flip it, you won't see anything happen. Unless you walk back outside and you'll see that it turned on the light outside, because now you're inside, you can't see what's happening. So you can flip that switch over and over again. So your friend comes over and says, hey, how do you turn this light on the outside of the house? And you say, you go inside and you flip the first switch on the left in there. So he goes in and he flips the switch and the light's on. And he says, I don't believe that. I don't believe that switch turns the light on. I think it's the magic feather in my pocket. That's essentially what you're dealing with. And you have to say, okay, you either are the type of person who says, I can no longer take you seriously, we can't have a conversation, or you say, all right, we now have two hypotheses, either this switch or this magic feather. How would we go about testing it? And then you develop a test to show him that he's just freaking wrong about his feather and that you're right about the switch. It's unfortunate that you can't do that for everything. It's not, everything isn't as easy to demonstrate as just flipping a switch. And I think the part of the problem is that people want it to be. And when they say, why is there something rather than nothing? How did evolution occur and everything else? It's much easier for them to flip a magical switch that turns God on than it is for them to actually understand. And it's, by the way, it's not just carbon dating. That is one of many radiometric datings, which overlap and confirm and affirm each other.
Yes, so. Right, yeah.
So you're preaching to the choir right here.
Right.
Well,
rhetorically speaking.
Your job now as the choir is to go find your friend and bring him to church.
Okay.
Thanks, King.
Thank you. And about your talk on evolution, I thought it was very good, but it's still a little overwhelming to the see. I have a degree in engineering, so I had no problem understanding what you were saying. But to an average person, it might be a little overwhelming.
Sure.
And I think that's why people like Kent Hovind, when you listen to them, they give very simple, quick, and dirty answers. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to digest him rather than what you gave. Even though it's simpler than previous explanations I've heard, I'm not saying that you didn't do a good job, but
no, it's a difficult thing.
A whole lot of information, and to somebody who's a layman, they may have a hard time accepting it.
Yeah. See, there's the thing. Since I know,
and I don't know how to solve that.
Yeah. Since I know everything. Well, not everything, but I know a lot more than what I presented. Boiling it down to the very smallest thing, that's what makes teaching challenging. And if you want to break it down even simpler, DNA is the template. The copy is made, it goes out into the cell, and that copy is what's read and turned into proteins.
It's funny because I get this. Taking complex topics and boiling down to where anybody can understand, it's, I would have to say, without too much arrogance, it's something I've gotten better at over the years that I've done the show, in part because I had to make it so I could understand it. I'm talking to people with different backgrounds. It is a very difficult thing. And there's a temptation.
But you do it very well.
Thank you. There's a temptation for me always to cut to the chase, because if somebody's not able, and there's plenty of people who can't understand what Clare was talking about, and they're going to have to go out and do some legwork. But if somebody who's just like flat out refusing, there's always a temptation for me to say, okay, how does DNA work? It's magic. It's just a different kind of magic than the magic you're appealing to, because we can actually demonstrate it and show what's happening. And the fact that you can't understand it, I realize that pretty much makes it magic to you. But there's magic that scientists actually understand and can demonstrate and can agree on and can put up for peer review and can put up for falsification. And then there's the bullshit magic that your religion is proffering, which is that God did it and you don't have to explain it. So if you don't understand, if you can't comprehend either of them, why wouldn't you go with the one that other people clearly understand rather than the one that appeals to something that's beyond comprehension potentially?
And why not go for something that's...
I don't know.
Why not go for something... I don't understand the tendency for some people to not be curious. I don't get that at all.
Laziness and fear.
I remember something Carl Sagan said a long time ago. Sometimes when young children are really great scientists because they're very curious, but then once they pass a certain age, that curiosity gets drummed out of them.
Yeah.
By schools.
Something to do with the education system. I forget what
I don't know what his example is, but the one I've used repeatedly is this. The fear of being called on when you don't know the answer, because if you say I don't know, you're going to be mocked, including sometimes by teachers. And so that gets us to the point where I don't know, which is often the right answer and the best answer, becomes a bad answer. And people become terrified of it. But anyway, I'm going to move on to some other callers. King, I appreciate your time.
Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Thanks for hanging out.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I really hope I want to see more changes in the education system, because I've watched smart kids just get the curiosity kind of drummed out of them for fear of giving the wrong answer.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, what's 8 times 3? Well, crap, let me use it. And if you're slightly slower about it, and the thing is, there are things I'm incredibly quick at, and there are things that I'm pretty much a doofus about. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, and I make mistakes all the time. So saying I don't know, it's something you have to get used to. And once you do, it's like, okay, I screwed up. I don't know.
Or give me a minute. Let me
look it up.
Let me look it up. Let me find a thing. Yep. So that instead of me just saying, here's the answer, as if there's an authority, I can actually point to you to an explanation and independent sources.
Right.
Who knew?